In January 2017, a new president of the United States was elected, and the term fake news was born. It was Donald Trump's first press conference as president-elect when the term fake news broke out of media discussion and into the mainstream. Apart from the obvious, fake news has affected and in some cases hurt the PR industry. These pains are now being felt across the communications and marketing industry as well. Media coverage has always been an important value proposition for PR because the public trusted what they saw as independent third-party endorsement from the media. But as trust in the media wanes, so too does our value as PR professionals. We are starting to see big companies lash out against those that spread fake news. Facebook, for example, recently blocked all ads coming from Facebook pages known to post and share fake news. Google even launched a fact-checking tool in its search and news results to ensure the news you see is real. And while this is good news, fake news is still trending on Google. Presidents, who shall not be named, and their teams are still using the term alternative facts to disprove an opponent's argument. So what can we do? I'm serious. What can we, the hosts of Young PR Pros, our listeners, who are the next generation of PR communications and marketing professionals, what can we do? In this episode, we will discuss real, concrete steps young professionals and young at heart professionals can take to protect the value and trust of our industry and the media. And now, on with the show. Today's episode is sponsored by Reagan Awards. If you're seeking opportunities to accelerate your career in public relations, you should consider entering a Reagan Award program. You'll prove the success of your contributions to your company, earn a free registration to a Reagan event, and take home a shiny trophy. Current programs include the Video and Visual Awards, the PR Daily Awards, which will focus on the industry's most successful PR campaigns, publications, and events, and the ACE Awards, which honors individual PR practitioners from in-house teams and agencies. Young PR Pros listeners will receive 20% off. That's 20% off entry fees for these three programs using the code YOUNGPR. Visit reagan.com/awards to enter today.
You're listening to Young PR Pros episode 125, Fake News.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Young PR Pros, a podcast for the young and young at heart PR pros looking for tips and advice on how to build and advance their careers. I am Christine Darbell in Ottawa, Canada.
And I'm Julia Kent in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
I'm Ross Simmons, also in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
And welcome to another episode of Young PR Pros. So, I don't know if you guys know, but in doing some research for this episode, and I kind of had vaguely heard about this, but I actually read up on a little bit more. But Google actually has launched a fact-checking tool in its search and news results. So what the search giant is doing is they're not going to be doing the actual fact checking themselves. That would take a ridiculous amount of manpower and probably impossible. But what they're going to do is they surface results from the likes of PolitiFact and Snopes. So, for example, what would happen is if you search 27 million people enslaved, a result showing the actual claim, who said it, and whether it is true or not will appear. So this is sort of Google's way, and this is, great news. This is sort of Google's way of trying to combat this whole fake news, alternative facts era that we're in right now. And this is great news for me. Anything to separate fact and fiction, bringing back trust to one of, our most important gatekeepers, especially in public relations, is journalists and the media. This is all, good news for me. But while Google is designing and testing these, amazing AI tools that are hopefully going to try to, solve all world's problems, including making sure that everything that you see is fact, I thought today we could talk a bit about, what can we do at a grassroots level, concrete things that we could do, the three of us, all of our listeners, on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to condemn fake news. So, Julie, I want to start with you. Is there something that you do in your daily life right now that you think will help eliminate this era of fake news?
Yeah, actually, and the first thing that came to mind was the terrible shooting incident in Ottawa. Oh gosh, that must be coming up on 3 years ago now. Maybe more, maybe 4.
3 years. 3 years,
yeah, 3 years, and at the War Memorial in Ottawa. And I remember at the time I wasn't working downtown; I was working in the West End, and I was religiously following Peter Mansbridge's coverage. But it was very confusing because on social media there were people saying that there were multiple snipers, there were multiple gunmen, that they were on the roofs of different buildings downtown, and there was a lot of fake news going on, and it was being reported by reputable news sites, as well as some other social media influencers, or not even influencers, just regular people picking up on a rumor and sharing it as fact. And I remember Peter Mansbridge repeatedly saying, "We're hearing reports, allegedly, this has not been confirmed." And I love his style, or loved, I guess, since he's now retired, his style of reporting, because he kept reminding us that these things were not confirmed. And until they were confirmed by reputable, trusted sources, they were just reports, nothing else. So I think the number one thing our listeners can do is on social media not to share information unless they are sure it's real news. And particularly in crisis situations such as the shooting in Ottawa, don't retweet or share anything until it's been confirmed. And I think that if everyone did that, we would eliminate that the rumors and the fake news floating around, particularly, in disasters like the shooting, or, for example, right now, Hurricane Harvey.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Yeah, the Ottawa example is a perfect example, and I'm sure our listeners can probably come up with 10 or 15 examples worldwide. There's been tons of examples, and probably crisis is probably the worst perpetrator of fake news, because there's so much chaos that people just start sharing, and then there's like the snowball effect, right? Because everyone's just worried and you don't really know what's going on, so you don't know what to believe and what not to believe. So what about you, Ross? Is there anything that you currently do right now, or something you like to do to kind of condemn, fake news, or even just change the way that people look at fake news?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, for me, the best thing that anyone can do is just call fake news out when they see it. So if you see somebody on your Facebook sharing something that is clearly fake news and they don't know that it's fake news, correct them. Let them know. Comment, leave a factual link that kind of goes to Snopes, and provide them with information from a quality source. I think that when we call people out for sharing fake news, that allows us to ensure that the goal of fake news, which is to have negative and kind of skewed perceptions imposed on people, we have an ability to kind of curb that. So I would always recommend that people call out fake news when you see it, and also don't be afraid to kind of assist with kind of getting rid of fake news by using your settings on Facebook, which allow you to kind of report fake news when you see it. So embrace those tools, but also don't be afraid to use your voice and call it out when you see it. I think that at the grassroots level, that's really the best thing that any of us can do.
And it's funny that you say that, Ross, because I've had people come to me when I've had this conversation before, and people are like, well, I don't know what fake news is. That's the whole, problem with fake news, is it looks credible, right? Mm-hmm, and then
right.
My reaction is, yes, sometimes, it's a little bit hard to figure out, but I think everyone kind of has that gut reaction when you see something and you kind of tilt your head and you think, wait a minute, there's something quite not right about this story. I feel like if it's too good to be true, if it's too grandiose to be true, if it's too outrageous to be true, it probably is. It's probably fake news. So I think if you don't know, and if you look at a post or you look at someone who shared a link of fake news and then you're like, that kind of seems off. I mean, one thing that we can kind of do, which kind of goes into my tip is, we should all be reporters ourselves. I think one thing that, previous generations have relied on reporters and journalists to be the ones that dig in and look at the details and make sure that what they're reporting is fully factual. But now with the age of social media, anyone can share any sort of news. So I think we all at a grassroots level have to put our reporter hats on once in a while and think like a reporter and ask a lot of questions, especially if something seems off and doesn't seem right. Ask the question. And maybe it's asking, your friend, because maybe neither of you know whether or not it's fake news, but, posting a comment on there and saying something doesn't seem right. The fact that they say X, Y, and Z, where's the proof for that, And then maybe that just, because there's also the other side that you don't really want to make everyone feel really bad or stupid for sharing fake news, because I'm sure we've all been duped once or twice by fake news. But maybe, trying to put that reporter hat on and making sure that you ask a lot of questions. And if something seems off, do your own digging and try to figure out whether or not it's right or wrong. And this conversation of fake news actually makes me think of it's this cartoon that seems to be ingrained in my head that I saw on Twitter probably in 2009 when I first got my first Twitter account. I remember seeing this tweet that linked to a really funny cartoon, and it was about how people were starting to use Twitter at the time, because that's when it was really starting to pick up. And there's 3 boxes. So picture a comic book strip. And in the first box, a guy's sitting and he's looking at his phone, and then there's a little bubble that comes up with, a really sexy headline, whatever, man bites dog or something like that. And and then the person turns around and hits retweet. And then the second box is another outrageous title. And then it's 2 minutes later, he hits retweet again. And then the third box, which is another 2 minutes later in the timeline, sees another outrageous title and then hits retweet. And then the last box is his friend who's following him on Twitter. And it says, dude, you just retweeted 3 articles in 1 minute. I didn't realize you were that fast of a reader. And then the guy's I didn't read the articles. So he was just retweeting because the headline was funny. And I think it can be easy to do that on Twitter. And I've been victim of that, where I see, a headline and it's oh my God, that's hilarious, or that seems awesome, or that's, a point or a point in my argument that I've been trying to make or something like that. And then I'll hit retweet or something like that. But often what I've been doing lately is trying to be a little bit more accountable to what I'm sharing on my network to make sure that I'm not propagating fake news, and is by just clicking on the link and reading through it, because sometimes if it's really outrageous...
Oh, that's what I was just going to say.
Yeah.
Don't ever share or retweet something that you haven't read in full.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because even though, and I think it's really stupid when people say tweets are my own or tweets are not endorsements. I just think that that's ridiculous. Even though people may say that in their profile, if you retweet it, some people will automatically think you're endorsing or you agree, or you just. Anyways, I agree. You just have to read everything before you share it.
Exactly.
I think it's just so easy these days to kind of see a headline that kind of resonates with somebody based off of even their own biases. And if something confirms your biases, of course, you're more likely to kind of share it, because it's showing you that you were right all along and that idea that you had is correct. So people are more likely to share that content. But I think what we need to do is also recognize that when you click on that link, you get to see the source. You get to see what that URL is. And over time, you get more familiar with knowing, okay, if something's on CNN, if something's on CBC, if something's on one of these credible sources, you have a better chance of knowing, okay, this is legit content, versus something that's on this random URL that's from Russia somewhere that you've never seen before. And I think that that's one of the key pieces that a lot of people don't even notice. If you look at your URL, you can quickly see if you're on a site that's legit or if you're on a site that's really just fake news.
For sure. All right, so, I mean, we've kind of given some, like, general sort of advice on what you can do on a regular day, but I really kind of want to dig into specifics, and I really want to kind of get down to those concrete things that our listeners can do every day to eradicate fake news. So I'll actually jump in with my sort of specific tip. So remember when you had to do those university or college research papers with those annoying footnotes? Well, I'm, bringing them back and I'm doing that a lot more. So for every news release, memo, blog post, even like a lengthy email, in fact, anything that I assert a fact in, it gets a footnote. And this does two things for me. One, it actually, for me, it's forcing me to include about 30 minutes to an hour of research time, which I think is really important because I think it formulates what you want to talk about. It helps you get your proof points. And it also makes sure that, especially in public relations and communications, where you often are doing a lot of persuasion, it helps make your argument. So that research I find is very, very valuable to make sure that, and Ross, you've talked about this in previous episodes. I don't just research things that, support my argument. I also research things that might be anti my argument so that this way I can anticipate what people are going to say. And then I make sure to put footnotes and reference everything that I'm putting in there to a credible source. So this does one thing for the reader of whatever, the memo, the blog post, the news release, can know that what I'm giving them is factual and has been well researched. And especially when we deal with reporters who are, underworked and underpaid, they have to do 1,001 things. Sometimes it's really hard for them to actually check on every single little fact. So just as being good PR professionals who work with reporters, we should make sure that we do a little bit of that work for them. They'll still dig into it a little bit deeper, but we should still present them with, here's the facts behind the story that I'm trying to sell you right now. And then on the other hand, it also actually helps me because I work for an ex-journalist. My boss was a journalist for 20 years. So whenever I've gotten used to working with a journalist, and I think, every boss should think this way, but whenever I present a writing piece to him, he looks at every single one of my facts and he'll ask me a question about the fact. And I'm now more prepared because I actually have the reference and the resource. And if I don't know the answer, then we can pull up the resource right away and say, okay, well, let's dig into this fact a little bit, because maybe there's another story hidden behind that fact that we want to reveal or something like that. So the footnotes in your university paper referencing every single fact you do, I think is something that you should bring back into your professional life and should be something that you do on a regular basis.
Good tip.
What about you, Ross? Is a real concrete tip that our listeners can do?
Yeah, so for me, what I like to do is go directly to the source. I think what you were highlighting is really, at the end of the day, with some of the best things that you can do. But what I like to also do is if you're reading a blog post or you're reading an article and that piece says something like, we found that X number of people do ABC, try to track down who it was that originally made that claim, who it was that originally made that statement, and use them as like a guiding force to really know whether or not that is a credible source. There's a lot of stats that get thrown around these days that kind of come from nowhere. I know there's this one stat that people can there's a stat that says that people are able to kind of connect with images 70 times faster than they can connect with written word. I've tried to track down the source for this stat, and if any of the listeners know where it is, please let me know. But there is literally nothing but a circle of people sourcing each other without actually getting back to like an actual journal or a study that actually kind of highlighted it. So there's a lot of numbers like that get thrown out there. Somebody does a talk, they say something, and then they just stick. So it's important to always look for who it was that originally kind of came up with a conclusion or came up with a stat.
Well, I don't know if you guys know, but like 80% of fake news is actually created by Republicans. Anything you say with a straight face sounds like a fact. pulled that out of thin air. So, like, then that's, I think, the problem with fake news is anyone can, you put a number in front of it, and you know what? I could have been really specific. I could have said 83%, you know, of Republicans who live in Kansas. Like, you add specific, like, if you make it really specific, people think, oh. And especially if you say it with authority. I mean, there's principle of persuasion. When you're trying to persuade something to do something or to sell an idea, you need to sound confident and you need to sound like you know what you're talking about. And unfortunately, some people have, you know, taken that to the dark side where it's like, well, if I just pull out a number and say whatever after it, as long as I say it with confidence and I add some specifics to it, people are just going to believe me. You know, so it's again, being that
or
reporter.
If you say it with a British accent, people will automatically, if you are male and you have a British accent, you are automatically more credible.
Fair enough.
Or if you're Morgan Freeman.
True.
That would be, that is true. Morgan Freeman is the only American whose authoritative voice trumps any British voice. But.
All right, Julie, what about your concrete, specific tip for our listeners?
I'm going to sort of repeat myself and keep it short. You know, whether it's in a crisis like what I described or not, do not retweet or share anything that you are sure is not real news. And I'll just leave it at that.
Well, that's pretty good. So before we head off to the next segment, one other thing that I wanted to talk about is that, you know, this whole thing of fake news is really bad. It's really bad for our colleagues on the other side of this line, the reporters and the media who we work with extensively, and especially someone with a big role in PR. A lot of my value is based on the amount of media that I can get. So the more the media is distrusted, the harder it is for me to gain value in what I do. But at the same time, trying to protect our own industry. The other thing that, is probably important, sort of important discussion for public relations and communications and marketing professionals is we also need to find other ways that PR is valued and remind, C-suite level and clients that we work with that media is just one aspect of what we do and one aspect of our value that we bring to the table. We can promote our message in other means. There's owned media, there's paid media, there's face-to-face. There's tons of other ways to communicate. PR is not just media relations. PR is a lot of other things. And now the lines are being blurred between PR and communications and marketing and advertising. So I think reminding our industry as a whole that, even though fake news is here and it is dangerous and it is something that we don't want and that we want to eradicate, I think it's also a nice reminder to people that, but remember, it's just one part of the value that we bring to the table. There are other things and other ways that we can share and speak to our audiences. There are tons of other gatekeepers that we can go through. So that's our sort of contingency plan. If fake news decides to stick around, we need to remind, our clients and bosses that there's more to PR than just media coverage. Thanks again to Reagan Awards for sponsoring this episode. Don't forget to check out Reagan's award programs. The video and visual PR Daily and ACE Award programs have many categories dedicated to new trends in PR and industry best practices. Make sure to use your code YOUNGPR to get 20% off entry fees for these 3 programs. Visit Reagan.com/awards to enter. That's Reagan.com/awards to enter. All right. Breakfast Club, it is time to share our articles that our listeners need to read over breakfast tomorrow. Ross, you are first on the list this week.
Great. So I have an article that was published in thenextweb.com. It's by a gentleman by the name of Ben Jacobson, and it's called You're Targeting the Wrong Channels for Your Earned Media Publicity. So when you think about what we just kind of discussed in the rise of fake news, but also the sense that this kind of industry as a whole is starting to kind of dabble in more than just sending out press releases. It's getting involved with public speaking, it's getting involved with communities and social media, advertising, marketing, so on and so forth. I think that this article does a great job of talking about all of the different areas in which a PR pro or even a marketer in general can have an impact on a business. So it's by a gentleman by the name of Ben Jacobson, thenextweb.com, called You're Targeting the Wrong Channels for Earned Media Publicity. It's a great article. It has a lot of great reports and stats and facts and figures. It's definitely something that I think everybody needs to read.
From a reputable source.
Indeed.
What about you, Julia? What is your article this week?
Well, you guys, if you've spoken to me for more than an hour, you will know that I am a stickler for some grammar, particularly commas, but I'm a little nuts about grammar. So my article today is taking it back to the basics, and it's from a website called Corporate. So not corporate, corporate, E-T-T-E at the end, .com. And it is a fashion, lifestyle, and career advice blog for women. And they even have a corporate moms section for working moms. And it's one of my favorites. And what I really love about them is they are always giving appropriate workplace fashion advice and, you know, where to get a really great business suit for a reasonable amount. But this piece is, you guessed it, about grammar. And it's entitled The 5 Grammar Rules You Absolutely Seriously Have to Know. And these are non-negotiables. So these are the 5 things that make you look like you don't know what you're doing if you make the mistakes. And I'm the queen of typos. I swear every email I send has like 3 or 4 words that were actually not supposed to even be in the content of the email because my brain works faster than my fingers. But, you know, in official publications and things like that, and we've talked about this before, there are some things that you just cannot flub up on, period. So this is in the article, and what I really like about this piece, it's very short and sweet. It's an easy piece to read over your breakfast and just to check in that you don't make these 5 mistakes. But it also suggests further reading, and there's a few of my favorites in there, including the Eat, Shoots, and Leaves book by Lynn
It's my
Truss.
favorite grammar book.
It's the best. Everyone should own it. Everyone should have read it. And then it has some links from Grammarphobia, the Washington Post, and my favorite online source for grammar, Grammar Girl. So
I love the Grammar Girl.
Grammar Girl's the best
follow
online
her.
one. Yeah, for sure. So anyways,
Yes.
that's my article.
That's a good one. That's a good suggestion. So I'm a little bit behind on this fad, but I'm enthralled in Scandal right now. And I know it's been out for a little while.
Where are you in Scandal? What episode? What season?
I can't remember. Season 2 or something like that. Anyway,
oh gosh!
I know.
Oh, you're still early.
I know.
My goodness,
So I'm super
Christine.
behind. And I think I'm on season 2. I know it's by the same creators as Grey's Anatomy, and I was obsessed with Grey's Anatomy and couldn't. I binge watched that so much, and I knew that the same thing was going to happen with Scandal, so I kind of stayed back until I was ready, and then I jumped in. But I am also in love with Olivia Pope, and wish I could be, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say badass, but I'm going to say it. I wish I could be as badass as she is. So Vanity Fair, I was so happy to actually find this because I was actually just Googling around for Scandal articles. And Vanity Fair wrote an article about life lessons from Scandal that you all everyone needs to read this one. And then if you've read it and you think it's really cool and you haven't watched Scandal, then you can proceed to binge watch the entire series on Netflix. So other than the lesson, if you don't own a trench coat, you can't be trusted, which I love that lesson, by the way. The other lessons can actually be used to be, a better leader and a better negotiator. And there's actually some pretty good life lessons in there. like one of the quotes from Olivia Pope is, you know, if you want me, you need to earn me, which kind of goes back to, I think a few episodes ago, we were talking about knowing your worth as a entrepreneur or as a freelancer. And, you know, I know that your clients don't necessarily, you have to earn to get clients, but I think clients also have to earn you as well. And they shouldn't take you for granted. And I think that's something that, you know, we should all kind of have in the back of our mind is you know, Olivia Pope screaming at the President of the United States saying, if you want me, earn me. So that's always in the back of my head, you know, when I'm trying to feel empowered. Anyway, it's Vanity Fair is you know, just a great read in general. I love their articles. It's short enough that you can read easily over your breakfast. And if you do watch Scandal, you're just going to really enjoy it. For every little tip, there's a little, it's either a video or a GIF that'll bring you back to, you know, your favorite episodes. So that's my fun little read over breakfast tomorrow.
Can I just say, I am going to make a very bold prediction that the further you get down the line with Olivia Pope, the further into the series, you are no longer going to worship her.
No.
And that's not giving anything away. I'm just saying some of her decisions that are so impressive to you right now
They're just not gonna.
Well, no, they're gonna change a little bit. They're gonna take a different direction. So
Does she come back, though?
Enjoy it while you can, okay?
Okay.
Would you agree, Ross?
I don't know. I'm still a fan, even through all of the stuff, but
maybe it's just her romantic exploits that I am unimpressed with. Maybe. Anyway,
well,
we can,
you know,
we can let our listeners debate that one out too, because that's a polarizing subject.
Very polarizing. But you know what? If I'm having like a bad day with Olivia and not loving her as much, you know, Harrison jumps in, and I always love Harrison and wish I could talk as fast as him and convince everyone to do anything, because he's like the
anybody
best
who's seen past where you are knows why I'm laughing.
I've got to.
Right,
yeah,
Ross?
I've got to binge watch.
You know why?
No spoilers.
No spoilers.
No spoilers. Yes, no spoilers. I'm not listening. Yep. Anyway, okay, so at least, well, now I know. Okay, well, let's jump into lessons learned. And I'm going to say my first lesson is that I know that my dreams are going to be crushed when I continue to watch Scandal. So that's my lessons learned, is to prepare myself for the rest of Scandal. But no, I still love it. And anyone who hasn't watched it, it's a good watch. It's a lot of drama, which is sometimes nice to just get lost into this over dramatic show, but it's also I find you know, I relate a little bit with the PR side, because she does work with media, and there's, you know, decisions that she has to make, and it's both on the law side but also on the public perception side, and she's, you know, worked to help elect the current president of the United States, not the real president, but the president in the show. So there's just some political sort of PR stuff that's really fun. So anyway. But that's my lessons learned, is that I've got to brace myself for the rest of it. What about you, Julia? What's your lessons learned today?
Well, I really liked your reminder that we need to find other ways that PR is valued, and, you know, there's other ways that, you know, PR is valuable other than media. So we can, you know, promote other things like you mentioned, whether it's, you know, events or owned media or paid media. So yeah, that was a good reminder that it's not just about media coverage anymore. Well, why don't you give us your lessons learned, Ross?
All right. So my lesson learned would definitely be the reminder, again, around the importance of kind of like footnotes. So similar to when we were in university and we use footnotes, I think that it's important that we start to invest time and energy in, again, including those footnotes in the documents that we're sending around to clients and to people that we're working with. When we're writing blog posts, always remember to include that source. I think that it's a valuable way to give yourself credibility, but also to give a bit of credit to the people who did the work up front.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Young PR Pros. We would love to hear from you and hear how we did. You can email us at youngprpros@gmail.com. Check out our blog at youngprpros.ca. We're also on Facebook at Young PR Pros Podcast. And, of course, Twitter at Young PR Pros. Thanks, and we'll talk to you next time. This episode featured tracks by Lee Rosevear. Editing and production by Claire Bonnyman.